Still working with the 2 kWh Chevy Volt module, like the one we've been discussing. And here is the BMS satellite with its pigtail plugged into the module and its proximity clip. Okay, we'll get back to that. And then here's one of the ends that I clipped off when I made the little meter leads. And let's see if you can see here. 20 gauge. I wonder why that won't. Okay, I guess you gotta have glasses on to see far away. But yeah, use the 20 gauge spot for stripping these wires. So OEM wires usually aren't labeled as to the gauge, but going by that, they're 20 gauge wires. And we stripped the end of it off, and they're actually pretty robust wires. They're not real flimsy. And just for comparison, this is some other stuff I use for signal wire, and it's listed or labeled as they're 422 gauge wires. And I can't use the 20 gauge spot on the stripper to strip these. They'll slide right through. Yeah, there's that wire through the 20 gauge slot, and like I said, it just slides right over. So I would assume that the Chevy Volt BMS lead sensor wires or lead wires are 20 gauge. As far as origin of the fire in this pick, you can see this plug-in going to the BMS satellite is pretty much still intact, and then it's the wiring and the proximity clip going to the BMS plug, and that's what's totally burned up and gone. So that kind of indicates the point of ignition was right there. So in the picture, this is the plug on the BMS satellite that was pretty much still intact. These are your what's left of the spaghetti wires, he calls them. Then you got the up to the connector that plugs in the module itself. And this was totally burned out, and the area below it. This is all burned up and charred, but pretty much still intact. So I don't see where, no, I can't say that, but. And if you remember our Chevy Volt lithium battery cell direct short test, got red on red, and put black on black. You could see the fire was mainly off of the negative terminal, but it really didn't expose or open up the terminal, or doesn't seem like anything come out of the cell to cause the fire. It just got hot enough to light this rubber boot on our jumper wire and even melt the end of the jumper alligator plug, I guess. You can see the smoke was coming from both terminals. Looks like just where it got the positive terminal hot enough to melt. Burnt half of our clamp off the ground side of our jumper wire. And we had a little bit of a fire. Well, even after our little short circuit fire. Alrighty, and even just like he showed when he kicked the battery and there was still energy in it, and even backing the vehicle out. But yeah. So comparing the situation to our direct short test, the heat would have been right at the short according to the test, and then the materials around it is what was smoking and some of it caught on fire. That's what I'm thinking. But just why did something short in here? That's the question we should be trying to figure out. More to come. So going by our short test, let's say if something shorted in here, the origin of the fire and flames or the short would expose itself as in here, and this would be burned up more. Or even if it was in more of the main BMS or the master that plugs in here and is somewhere else, the fire or flames or heat or melting would be there or through the wires up into here somewhere. But this all seemed intact, and even like I said, this plug was pretty much intact. This was real bad, and this was just collateral damage, I'm thinking. But also, even if one of these wires broke, also it's been mentioned that, well, maybe one of these wires broke off and was flopping around and shorted out against another. Huh. Even if one of the wires broke off, you'd have to have a second wire break off in close proximity. And then they would have to touch. And like I said, these are pretty robust wires. Good and strong connectors. Oh, that's real strong. These are in good and strong connectors and strapped down real good. Yeah, it seems like it'd be a bit difficult. Alright, well, more to come. Oh, why do I care about this so much? Well, I've been working with these exact modules, and actually these exact plugs, quite a bit lately. And I have several of these modules powering several of my carts and my motorcycle. So something is just spontaneously catching on fire on these modules. I kind of want to know why.